for the first time to see what we can do, tapping in with the community on LinkedIn. So testing out this LinkedIn audio for the first time. Welcome. Got Brooke, K-Bot, what's up? So I don't know if you can raise your hand or if I need to send an invite or make you a speaker. I don't think it's very easy to do. So I know we've got Hakim, Draper, and we got Micah joining us as well. So they're on there. I was hoping it would be more like Clubhouse where you could just raise your hand and jump on up here, but maybe it's not that easy over here on the LinkedIn. So we'll give a couple more minutes here for people to join. There's Hakim. Okay, it popped you right up here as a speaker. Nice. Welcome, Hakim. How's it going? Okay, Brooke's asking to join. All right. Allowed to speak. Perfect. So you are able to raise your hands. Look at that. Great. Love to see it. There he is. All right, we're good.
All right. You got me? Yeah, it was weird. I could hear you. Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
Got Micah in the house. What's up, Micah? Welcome.
Good afternoon from Los Angeles.
Tapping in from LA. Love to see it. And Brooke, how are you? Thanks for joining.
Good afternoon. I just kind of came up here just to see if it was easy to just get up here. You raise your hand or what happened. So I can go back down.
No, you're good. You can hang out here. It's good. It's always, good to have diverse voices, you know? Awesome. Well, thanks for joining. Maybe we can give it another minute here, let people file in. But as I was mentioning, it is my first time hosting a space on LinkedIn audio. So we're going to see how this goes. And also really just wanting to kind of branch out the community, as I talked about earlier, in a narrative conduit space, and the need to try to reach new people, reach new audiences. And I think that LinkedIn is an interesting space, you know, very professional, very, you know, a little bit more corporate, you might say. I'm not seeing your hand up. Jagar, he's telling me his hand's up, but I don't see it here. Try raising it again. Anyway, we'll figure it out. We're learning here as we go. We want to get Jagar on stage, let him share his awesome Metavoxels creations. What's up, Samuel? Thanks for joining us. I don't know, Jagar might be glitching or something. Anyway, let me give a brief breakdown here. Hopefully we'll be able to get Jagar on stage eventually, and then I want to make sure we can hear from our speakers. So thanks everybody for joining. This is the first Web3 Warriors on LinkedIn audio. Maybe just a little bit of background about myself. David Karoma. I host the Web3 Warriors podcast every Saturday afternoon, or Saturday mornings, usually 12 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Central Time, where we talk to Web3 creators and builders, not just artists and musicians, but also developers, people that are creating kind of innovative projects and really creating solutions on the blockchain that can work and impact people's lives in a good way, you know? And so that's what the Web3 Warriors have been focused on. I come from a bit of a communications background myself, definitely not a quote unquote crypto expert by any means. I'm not a coder or a developer, and I'm definitely not here to pitch any projects or claim that you can get rich in this NFT Web3 space, you know? It's really about just promoting what I see as the new layer of the creator economy, and really seeing what's the potential of the technology and what Web3 is kind of bringing into reality, which is true ownership of your creativity, not relying necessarily on middle people and not relying on gatekeepers to allow you to reach a certain scale, but really being able to support other creators and get support from your community, from your collectors via peer-to-peer support on the blockchain. So that's what the Web3 Warriors podcast is all about, and that's what has kind of hooked me into Web3 and blockchain. I also work full-time in fintech, which I find a very interesting intersection right now, because as much as there's so many creative people doing awesome projects in blockchain, on the blockchain. I think the fintech space is kind of looking at that connection between the on and off chain, right? Like the need for everybody ultimately to be able to take some value off the blockchain and be able to actually, you know, be compensated in their local currency, right? And I think that is where the fintech side of things comes in. So that's also part of what I'm working on in my day-to-day life, and I'm really interested in the space and the technology, and really just hearing from, again, builders and creators that are pushing the envelope and pushing things forward. So it is always going to be an open platform, as much as I will try to reach out to certain creators and builders in the space to get them aligned ahead of time and notified as speakers. I would also always welcome any questions or any thought-provoking insights from the audience, assuming you can raise your hands and it works properly. So sorry, Jagar, I don't know why your hand raising is not working right now. But definitely that's going to be kind of the overall atmosphere for these spaces going forward. We're going to start with just like once a month, I think. So this is the last Friday of June. I'm thinking the last Friday of every month to start out. We'll host a space on LinkedIn, and it will be tied in with the Web3 Warriors podcast as well. And it's really, again, about just trying to reach a new audience, trying to also expand the educational side of things, right? The awareness and the education around Web3, and make it less about, you know, the metaverse and what's your favorite metaverse or what's your favorite crypto coin, and more about, you know, how can we use this technology to enrich people's lives, to open new opportunities for people, and most importantly, really just support each other and create community in Web3 and on the blockchain. So it's an exciting time to be innovating, to be working in this space. And I thank all of you who have joined so far, especially those of you who are the first timers on LinkedIn audio, just like myself. Some of you I was able to pull over from Clubhouse, so definitely appreciate that, and seeing the Web3 community branching out. So I'll also just add that this is a no FOMO zone. So even if you want to talk about your projects, let's make sure we're talking in a way that's just building each other up and not really, you know, trying to tell people to invest in this, that, or the next thing. So we won't be doing that here on Web3 Warriors either. So with all that said, really grateful for Hakim, Draper, and Micah, who were the first to confirm that they were able to join. And Brooke as well. Oh, he just dropped down. Brooke is also building in the metaverse and creating some really awesome voxels creations. So thank you, Brooke, for joining, and please do feel free to hang out on stage. We'd love to hear from you. But without any further ado, I think we'll jump to Hakim first, and then Skid Row Crypto, aka Journalist, to hear about his awesome kind of literature and storytelling that he's got going on the blockchain. But Hakim Draper, I shared a clip from an episode of Web3 Warriors where I interviewed Hakim, where he was really talking about how in Web3, more than anything, you know, it's the sweat equity that makes a difference. You know, it's the ability for someone to just come in, learn the technology, put their creations on the blockchain, and then, you know, reach out to the community of supporters or a brand new community to see if they have supporters and who wants to support them, right? And it's really about putting in that time and effort more than anything, not necessarily who you know or spending a whole bunch of money on technology, but really just taking the time and effort to learn, and then, you know, reaping your rewards on the back end after you've put in that time and effort. So that was an awesome clip, Hakim. It was a great interview as well. Anyone hasn't seen it, check out our episode on Web3 Warriors. But Hakim, I know you're also working on something really innovative in the copyright space, and how, you know, we don't need to go to these bureaucratic copyright offices necessarily. We can actually put our creations on the blockchain and let that stand as proof of our IP and our ownership. So Hakim, I'd love to hear your thoughts on Web3 and what you're doing in the space, and specifically the copyright innovations that you're working on now. Thanks for joining.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me. Thanks for the intro. I think it's funny. I fell in love with blockchain as a sort of technology in 2015 and 16. But, you know, over the last couple of years, I think I've really started to see the parallels from my career in music over the last 30 years and some of the artists and people who have gone on to have really prolific careers, and some of the potential things that are happening in Web3 and with Web3. And so for me, you know, we really started just looking at, I'm a big proponent of trying to fix the legacy ecosystem. But more importantly, I'm also a realist and understand that the current framework that's set up right now cannot be fixed. And so if we're going to stand a chance of helping to encourage or foster innovation, we've got to start at the core of the issue, which is the copyright and the rights holders. And nothing that's happening in this space right now really starts there from the music side. And so, I'm not one to sit around and complain. And we just started building. About 5 years ago, we've started building and deploying, projects that turned into products that turned into a company that now we're really going full-blown artist intelligence labs. We've got a really dope team of a bunch of really committed people who have experienced everything that one can go through in this industry on one level or another, from a touring musician to literally somebody who just did books and accounting and operations for music companies and artists. So we're really just trying to come at how we foster real effective solutions for musicians and creatives in this space, from a very realistic standpoint, which is, and I can't stress this enough, coming up with a new version of aggregation and, us collecting and deploying your revenue to you is just dragging the same problems that plague the space over there, over here. And so, we've got to start at the core, and it's not sexy and it's not fun. You don't go to the moon registering your copyrights. You're not promising fractional shares and giant hit records that's only going to turn out to $4 a quarter payouts or whatever. You're not doing any of the things that are the buzzwords, so we don't get a lot of coverage. What we do have from the hardcore creator community is a lot of members of our community. We've registered over 100,000 copyrights and growing. And for us, it's, Song Secure and what we've done with the copyrights on the blockchain is really the hinge point for everything. I was just looking at an update to some of the other tools that we're building. And I this in another room this morning, but one of the big challenges that I think every artist has right now, even major labels for that matter, is that right now my Spotify for Artists data is siloed in Spotify for Artists, and my Apple Music for Artists data is siloed there, and my Tidal for Artists data is siloed there, and my BMI data is siloed in BMI, and all of the data that I need to be seeing and reacting to in real time in the digital society that we live in now, I wait 30 to 60 days to receive in statements that make your eyes gloss over and have no value because the moment has passed.
And so you see that being changed to be instantaneous on the blockchain?
That's what we're doing now. So, that's one of the things we're doing now. So one of the things we're leading to with Song Secure is a thing called Song Vault, which is essentially your management framework, your ecosystem, your visual dashboard, where you get connectivity and you can see across all of these platforms where your music is both distributed and being consumed or engaged with. And so I was looking at some really cool integrations we've done where, again, we've started to connect the Spotify and the Tidal and the Apple Music for Artists and some of those resources. And there's low-hanging fruit in all of this. We have a product right now called Tune.bio. That is a free product that any uses Artist Toolbox AI or Song Secure gets, they can use. Version 2 of that has amazing integrations in it already. That'll be coming out in the next month or so. But so the idea that as an artist, I'm using a link sharing product that's not really designed for me and my industry is kind of ridiculous. If it was designed for me and my industry, it would have done what we just did, which is connect your Spotify and connect your YouTube and connect your Tidal and stuff. So you don't always have to go update the link for your newest release. So it's automatically there, and you just have to worry about sharing your damn link and getting out there and doing shows. There's little things in here that we could have automated a long time ago and made a lot more frictionless and a lot more seamless, but that involves connecting a bunch of data points without actually extracting revenue, and that's not sexy for a lot of people. It's exciting for us, so that's where we're headed.
That's amazing. And so you said that platform for the using blockchain to kind of claim your IP is songsecure.com, and that one's specifically for music.
Yes. Yeah. And born out of that, now that we've made some headway with both the international community and the U.S. Copyright Office, there will be Art Secure will be coming out here, I guess early July, which is the sister to Song Secure for visual artists who want to be able to have some place that they can point to say, here is a validated record of when I created this piece of art. Listen, one of the things, and I felt very strongly about this from the very beginning, as excited as I am about NFTs and Web3 and music and blah, blah, blah. NFTs ain't for everybody. I don't think every artist needs to be doing NFTs. I don't think you should have to make an NFT in order to have a registration on the blockchain of your provenance of your creation. That's Song Secure. Song Secure is just a utility, man. It's the beauty of blockchain. It's the purest form of application of the utility of blockchain. And for us, that's, again, where we start. We start with the simple things that, frankly, once we got as far as we did and started getting acknowledgement and, getting the recognition that, yes, this is first, under the Copyright Act of 1978, your copyright exists the minute you create something. So a better interpretation of that in the digital era is your copyright exists the moment you can prove that you created something. And this is why this was such an important step for us, because the current music copyright framework in the US is, go write a check, put your disc in an envelope and mail it to them. I think they take thumb drives finally now, but their rates went up $65 a copyright. And what does that do to prove provenance? Because you mailed it, and then eventually some intern that was assigned to the Copyright Office got around to opening yours. Better believe that everything that's being submitted from the major labels gets opened first. And so what does that do to prove actual provenance or when you made it? And I think we're getting into a time where now it's not going to be so much who created, who was inspired by what, but I think it's literally going to come down to, you're going to have very, very similar songs, eerily similar, and it's really going to come down to who could prove it, who could prove that they actually created this thing first. And in those cases, timing is going to matter. And that's why the speed of being able to go literally bounce your file and create some kind of registration and certificate and have it on the blockchain and have it linked to your music. Now, I'll say this. We tell everybody, and I say this all the time, this is the new poor man's copyright for me. That's how I look at it. If you're going to put a big marketing budget behind a song or an EP, go ahead, do every layer you have available to you. Do the U.S. Copyright Office. This is something you can literally do as part of your workflow and know that you have some of registration of creation of data. I found actually very interestingly, recently, we had a writer who created a song, literally uploaded a video of her singing the song, was at a writer's camp recently. And at the end of the writer's, they started having everybody sign all the splits. And she pushed back and said, look, I created way more of this song than you've given me. There's no way I can, come on, you got to do. And they were like, well, what do you mean? And she brought up her registry on SongSecure and played the video clip and showed the date that she registered it. And they went back and talked among themselves and came back and gave her a fairer deal on the splits. So we're seeing the utility of this in real time start to come to fruition. It's those things that are going to start to shift the tide. This is not going to be a great big shift in paradigm. And you're still going to want to go do your U.S. Copyright Office registration to be eligible for the full statutory damages and You still want to go through that process if you're going to spend a lot of money on marketing a thing. But if you're just trying to get your feet under you and get some traction going, as long as you can prove when you made it, you have 5 years to register your copyright. And that's $65. That $65 could do a lot for you.
No doubt. Amazing, Hakim. Thank you. This is, I think Song Secure is live, Art Secure is on the way, and that is 110% blockchain utility right there. And it's awesome that example you shared of that musician, right? She's not necessarily gung-ho in Web3 or doing NFTs and all this, but she knew that she put that example on the blockchain at that date, and that was able to be used, to prove her IP, her provenance, in creating, much of the beat, right? So, yeah, that's really interesting. And who knows, like you say, with AI, it's crazy.
Credit to the A&R that was running that camp, because he is kind of into NFTs and Web3 and blockchain, and he recognized what it was. And I wasn't in the room, but I would be willing to wager that he went to the rest of the camp and went to bat for her on that. And so credit to whoever in that camp that also recognized that tides are changing and these things are going to have to be recognized.
No doubt. That's amazing. Well, congrats on what you've already accomplished. And I think Art Secure is on the way, and your whole system that you got kind of building out here with your artist intelligence labs is definitely hella innovative. So look forward to seeing what you got around the corner. We'll jump over to Skid Row. Sorry.
Wait, let me share one more thing real quick.
Yeah.
Sorry, David. One more thing. Part of my inspiration for all of this is that for the last couple of years, we did the Music Business Red Pill sessions, which was like a room we did every morning for an hour. It's kind of tough because musicians don't get up early. So I have to get up early because, the business moves fast and it's global and yada, yada, yada. But so that was the best time for me. But one of the things in all of this is to be able to continue sharing that knowledge and sort of creating that real-time ongoing masterclass for anybody who does want to learn how to build up a real career in music, because there's a lot of ways that it can happen. And so that's part of what all of this drives, is that octave up, which I'm glad Micah's up next, because I'm gonna be talking to him about doing some guest blogs on there as well. But, that for me is really my legacy play, if I'm being totally honest here, is to empower and inform and educate as many artists as I possibly can. And there'll never be a sign up or a paywall or a whatever. That is literally just a place where we can just to share all of our experience in this industry and everything we're experiencing ongoing, as we're all very active in this industry. And so that's the thing I'm probably most proud of everything that we're doing, is being able to just have that stuff be out there and living, hopefully forever.
That's it. Immutable on the blockchain. And octaveup.com. Definitely check it out. You've been dropping some cool blog posts and interesting insights from some professionals in the space, and so it's really, really amazing. So definitely check out octaveup.com. And on that note, talking about blogging and really reporting and journalism, which is in general, I think it's underappreciated, frankly, but especially in the Web3 space, with all the crazy quote unquote scams and all these rug pulls and things like this happening. We need way more real reporting than we have, unfortunately. But Micah is a shining light in this journalism space, and has been reporting on a lot of amazing kind of stories from the space back, couple years now, a few years at least. So definitely love to hear your thoughts on that. I also just want to give a shout out to Jagar and anybody else who's trying to raise their hand. Apparently I can't see it. I'm on desktop right now, so I don't know if that changes anything. If anyone else, I don't know if Hakim or Micah are able to see it, maybe they can let you up, but apologies apologies, Jagar. I'd love to have you on stage here. But anybody who wants to try, please do raise your hand and we'll try to get you up. Brooke was able to join before, but yeah, apparently, we're learning. It's not quite as smooth as Clubhouse, but it's cool. It's a vibe. So Micah, how you doing? What are your thoughts on journalism in Web3? And please share specifically what you're working on. I know you got some cool stories on the Daily DGen and your own media platform as well. So yeah, what is journalism in Web3 looking like? And share what you're up to. How's it going? Thanks for joining.
Hey, good afternoon. Thanks a lot for having me. I really appreciate it. I haven't really gone about the business of promoting my work at the Daily DGen. I've just kind of let it organically evolve, and I'm really happy with where it is. Getting 50,000 visits a month, and particularly the articles that I'm writing are staying as the most viewed for week or two or more, which is really, really awesome. So I'm finding that in producing the right content, I don't have to market it as much. I don't have to tweet it as much. People who are searching for these subjects, topics, or interested in the artists or creators that I'm featuring are finding the work on their own. So I'm really happy with that. So the Daily DGen is actually an aggregation site. What I realized was if I was going to start my own blog or something, the volume of output, the volume of articles I would have to perform would be counterintuitive to the depth that I'm going with the articles. My articles are about 4 or 5 times longer than the average crypto article. I include photographs and video, my own photography whenever possible, but it's really digging deeper beyond the surface. It's not about drops per se, but more about who's building and creating and committed to the space. I'm really focused on people that have been here at least a couple of years or more and showing like a consistent persistence in the space. People like Jagar below, as an example, for instance. And it's been an awesome journey from writing for some publications in the beginning in early 2021 to kind of branching out into more freelance stuff. I was ghostwriting for some influencers, some of these million+ follower influencers for a while. So I kind of disappeared from the public outward facing thing as I was doing more copywriting and contract work. But I didn't find it as rewarding, even though it was more lucrative. I wanted to contribute more to telling the stories of our time. And that's kind of where I'm at now. So it might range from an investigative article like, the one I did on BitBoy, to writing about the BlackRock ETF, you know, the spot ETF application with the SEC and breaking down 162 pages of legislation for like the digital asset market structure bill, but also being able to feature some artists. I recently covered Sabet, Creatress, and I'm kind of working through some others to really kind of help to establish provenance because I feel like so much of what's happening in Web3 is real time. They're fleeting tweets and things that are gone from your feed, and people are not necessarily focused on their enduring legacy in this space, and it's really problematic. So I'm encouraged by the idea that I'm getting 50,000 views a month right now in its infancy, because I realize the demand is definitely there. I don't have to sell or push that when at one time I thought that people were not reading enough. I think what people are looking for, if they are going to read in Web3, is more depth and nuance and not necessarily a commercial, but more of a insightful look or perspective on the subject while featuring somebody. So it's been really cool to do this. Yesterday, I was meeting with a filmmaker from Venezuela who has a NFT documentary project that he's funding. I was able to sit with him in mid city LA, do a mini photo shoot, interview him with audio, which there'll be then clips, photography, and then the written sort of cleaned up transcript of the article. So it allows me to weave those stories in with all the top stories in Web3 because the aggregator is already drawing in all of the you know uh, DeFi stuff, the metaverse stuff, NFT stuff, gaming stuff. It's already drawing it in, and that's what's drawing the traffic. And then with my articles, just as I'm completing them, it's only maybe one every few days to a week. They're able to have prominent visibility. So if you go on the landing page of the dailydegen.io right now, you'll probably see my BlackRock article, which was, I believe I wrote that maybe 2 weeks ago, but it is still sitting as most viewed this week. And pretty much all of my articles that I write are getting that kind of exposure because I'm also promoting them in my socials and in conversations with people, which is something that most publications are not doing. They're not even hardly tweeting back stories or supporting the people who are actually writing for the publication. They're mostly pay for play situations, and I just want to present something that is more community driven, that is looking at the long vision of the space, and who is active now that is telling the story of our time in crypto, in Web3, at this moment in time, which later they'll be more valuable. They have a more enduring shelf life because of the in-depth reporting and people being able to read them and actually learn something about the space as it is now, solutions that are being built, or people that are actually visionaries looking at how to change or evolve everything that everybody is doing. So I'm really excited. I'm happy to be doing this, and it's not always the thing that's most paid attention to, as people are really more desperate to sell NFTs and really be out there in your face with that. But like I said, I'm just really really pleased with the traffic that I'm getting at this present time with no real SEO push or anything. It's really validating what the Daily Degen is going to ultimately become. So there's some uh, more evolution for the Daily Degen. I'm going to start to encourage guest writers and even people that have a perspective or insight in a specific aspect of Web3 that may only want to write a think piece. I'll help them develop that as the managing editor of Daily Degen. So I'm going to start to grow out a bit of a writer's room, so it won't be entirely on me to produce all of this content. And then there's some other things coming down the road that I can't really talk about. But I'm just really excited to serve the community in this capacity. I think that there there needs to be more of this happening because there's so much good happening that needs more exposure. But then there's also exposure to other things that people need context for. And I won't talk too long, but I think about the Twitter Spaces and how people are calling those journalism now. Yet what's happening is they bring in people, and for the sake of impartiality, they give everyone equal voice and time. And what that does is it leaves everyone leaving that space more confused than ever, because there's no clarity, there's no context brought to what is being said, there's no fact checking. And so people walk away more confused than they when they entered the space. Someone needs to bring all of that together, summarize it, boil it down to what's important, and then offer that in a way that you can literally find it later. People are not necessarily going to old Twitter spaces and listening to 2 and 3 hours of conversation to glean what they need out of it. So I believe that what I'm doing is also taking a lot of what's happening in real time and presenting it in a way that you have some conclusion and closure to an idea or information that has now been uh, it has evolved from maybe the conversation on Twitter. It's now evolved to, well, now we know this, this, and this. Or in the case of the digital asset market structure bill, 162 pages boiled down to a few thousand words with screen grabs and information for you to understand where legislation is going. And that was done like in conjunction with a couple of lawyers, which helped me to break all that down. So thanks for having me. It's not the sexiest stuff to talk about, but I'm glad
Oh,
that
it's
what I'm
awesome.
seeing. Thanks.
Thank you, Micah. It's like, yeah, I'm one who, I love journalism in general. I'm a bit of a political junkie, so I'm not one of those who's like, oh, all you journalists or whatever, like I appreciate what you're doing and what you just said about the Twitter Spaces, and I think it applies to any, you know, audio platform where they're, like you say, kind of giving equal weight to all voices. But the problem is you end up giving equal weight to the wrong voices or people who are spreading misinformation, whether intentionally or not, you know. And there is a place for true journalism to actually find the hard facts, right? You brought up a lot of interesting points that you've reported on. I'm very curious about BlackRock specifically. I'm definitely going to have to read through that entire article. I think I breezed over it, but what's your thoughts on BlackRock in general? And I think one of the takeaways was this idea that kind of the way they're going about these ETFs are actually somehow restricting access to Bitcoin and actually like kind of centralizing the access point, so it's not as like clear, like you have your sovereign wallet. I mean, those of us who are in the space, we're used to the saying, you know, not your keys, not your crypto. Do you think that they're trying to kind of push back on that? And yeah, what's your main takeaway from the BlackRock news? I just have to ask you while I have a journalist on stage here. I feel it's fascinating.
Well, I guess I could sum it up really simply by saying these banking institutions want you to be able to purchase this stuff as banking products the same way they've sold banking products in the past. So now you'll be buying paper Bitcoin because it'll be wrapped up in, you know, what is more like a investment portfolio. And in that portfolio, there'll be different Bitcoin products and other products. It's like, you know, hedge fund investing. I'm sorry, what's the term? Uh, oh gosh, it's escaping me. But when you're basically investing, even 401s, you know, you tend to kind of be investing in a suite of products, and that gives you more stability and safety because you might have some volatile stuff in there, but then you might have some very blue chip stuff in there. And then you feel that your investment is then secure in a really more controlled way. And maybe you have a more consistent rate of return than what we normally see in crypto, which can be volatile and there's real spikes. But the problem with that is you'll have these banking institutions doing the same thing they're doing in regular banking, where you're literally purchasing paper. And the problem with that, of course, is the same problem that's been happening with some of these banks that runs are being made on. There's just not enough legislation on these banks, and particularly BlackRock being one of the largest, well, it is the largest in the world. They have a lot of problems as a company. So not only did I break down what an ETF actually is, I also went into the difference between a regular ETF and a Bitcoin ETF, the risks of that, and then it breaks down. You know, it does bring in the. I talk about the value of not your keys, not your crypto, and then I have a bit of an investigative report on BlackRock itself. So to have all of that in one place instead of just these tweets about, oh, BlackRock's going to do an ETF, oh, that's great, or oh, that's not great, it lets people make up their mind for themselves by having all the information that they need all in one place in front of them, you know. And so that's kind of the stuff that I feel has a much longer shelf life, and it's quite sticky, which is why this particular article is getting so many clicks right now, because I believe there's a lot of people that are looking for clarity and they're not able to find it anywhere else.
Amazing. Kudos, man. That's really epic. And yeah, I think you're saying they're bundling it like in a mutual fund, essentially, right? And kind of like
yes,
a little bit buried. Yeah. I can see why, from their perspective, that would seem like quote unquote safer. But ultimately, you're not actually, you know, fully invested in a sovereign way in the Bitcoin, right? You're basically trusting BlackRock or JP Morgan or whoever it might be, you know, to essentially hold the Bitcoin for you. And when it spikes and you want to sell it, hopefully they actually let you sell it at that peak, you know. That's where I feel like often what happens, at least in the Coinbase scenario and others we've seen, where when there is a big spike and the people that have been hodling for a long time want to sell off, all of a sudden they close the taps and selling isn't quite as easy as it's supposed to be, right? I do want to also say, anybody, just wanted to mention, if you have any questions, anything, you know, thought-provoking come up, since the hand raising doesn't seem to be working, feel free to shoot me a message in a DM, and I can definitely relay the question to our speakers here on stage. But yeah, Micah, you were saying?
Only in that to kind of add to that whole conversation, the digital asset market structure bill was quietly released on June 2nd to not much attention by the entire crypto community, and it was because there was other news getting everybody's attention, some scandal and stuff like that. So here we are, June 30th, 28 days later, and I'm just now starting to see some Twitter spaces and stuff start to talk about this digital asset market bill because so many Twitter influencers were saying that the government wasn't organized, it didn't know what it was doing, et cetera, et cetera. And in the meantime, this 162 pages literally breaks down the government's entire plan for crypto, which includes defining issuers and sponsors and really nailing down what's been going on with these bin.eth characters and people just launching coins out of nothing and nowhere and running away with millions of dollars. All of this is included in a bill that is meant to not only put an end to that stuff but put banks at the forefront. Imagine a time when you may not be able to launch a coin at all on your own because the amount of paperwork and oversight and application process and qualifying as an issuer, et cetera, is now preventing the little guy or gal from actually doing some of the stuff we're free to do right now because legislation will dramatically affect it. That's basically what's coming down the pike. And it seems for the most part that nobody's really understanding it because people in our space don't read. They don't they sort of generalize government activity. Yet this is a very precise, spelled out plan. And there's two bills in the House, and both of them are moving with little or no resistance. So even when people are saying, well, it's the Democrats or the Republicans, they're all lockstep. There may be, a good cop, bad cop, but when you start to break down this paperwork and you see that, oh, two Republicans did this 162-page draft. Well, that's not, the narrative we've been seeing, you know, uh, with the Democrats literally seeming to be coming after crypto. So if people are not careful and are not reading, are not paying attention, and are just on Twitter expressing their opinion and having everyone else believe an opinion that isn't true, then that's where we have a problem, in the space because we can't formulate or organize in some resistance or some lobbying way if nobody even understands what's going on until it's too late. And then we just tend to have a lot of reactionary spaces where people are literally just reacting to something that's happened. And I mean, those are needed for people to kind of get their head around what's happened. But there is a way to approach some of this stuff before it actually becomes legislation. So I'm trying to put in that work. And I believe that over time it will be more appreciated than it is now. And I believe that even in years to come, these articles are going to mean a lot more than they did initially when they came out. That's my hope.
I can see that for sure. And I know you breezed over pulling together a writers collective or something. I'm down to join that. We worked together briefly at that nfts.wtf, had some pretty cool articles. That's the only crypto writing I've done so far, but I would love to help you out and be part of that team because I know it is a important initiative, really, to your point, and even though a lot of people in the space don't read, that's true, and a lot of them, believe whatever random conspiracy theories and hyped up news they might get from Twitter spaces. There is a serious dearth of real journalism, and you're filling that gap. So it's really amazing. I remember reading through your article with Sabet, right, who's I think he's one of the top grossing artists in the Web3 space and the NFT space. He definitely blew up from early on. Yet nowhere in that collection or in that article, I should say, are you talking about his floor price or his volume of, Ethereum sold or focusing on that as the kind of crux of it, right? You're actually telling the human story of someone who's into healing, someone who uses his art to heal, someone who's had a very interesting kind of tumultuous maybe relationship with the space up and down, while also obviously being very grateful for everything he's been able to accomplish and continues to build in the space. So yeah, it's really cool, and it's definitely a breath of fresh air to get this kind of reporting, this in-depth reporting about this topic and this space in Web3. So kudos, man. It's really amazing.
I want to do more of it. The Creatress article was another, but if you just imagine, writing a few thousand words per article, these are not little snippets. It takes a lot out of me. It's a lot of care and consideration. So I do need to scale. I have a spreadsheet, and it contains a lot of names, people that I want to catch up to and do this reporting on. I mentioned Jagar a minute ago, Metavoxels, but there's some other people, and it's time. They put in the work, and it's just a matter of me finding the opportunity cost, because while reporting on these issues, nobody is paying me directly. But I will say that as I embarked with the daily degen, it has opened up so many opportunities for me to make money in other ways. I realized that this reporting is actually the loss leader for me to generate income in other ways. That way, I'm not forced to report on projects that sort of paid me enough, or it's just a really tricky thing when you're like needing to vet people and projects. And in those early days that you mentioned, NFTSWTF, there's a couple of articles I wrote that I just truly regret now. They were, I was paid to write them, but at the time, the subject might have had an entirely different public image than they have now. Like I'm thinking of like someone like Strawberry. He went, he had a major fall from grace and got canceled after a lot of, personal stuff was revealed. But I wrote that article, prior to his drop. He sells out 10,000 NFTs. Back in those days, an article ahead of a drop was going to help you sell out, in addition to a couple of three drop parties, because the space was so insulated. It was like a bubble where essentially you could just speak in a two or three spaces, throw a drop party, have an article, and you could sell out your entire collection. Nowadays it's not like that, but that article still exists, and it kind of presents him in a way that I'd prefer that it didn't. So I'm just trying to be more careful now in like who I'm writing and reporting about. And if I'm going to come after you, I'm going to come after you. But otherwise, I want to equally balance that with celebrating and amplifying the people that deserve it, that most of these publications are never going to pay attention to, because they either don't have the gravitas or the follower count or whatever it is, or they're not clickbait enough. And it's just a massive void in the space. And so it's giving us this wrong kind of perception about what's actually happening in Web3, because it's being dominated by the Twitter conversations and a lot of the scandal, scams, and racist stuff that's happening. It's just really unfortunate.
Yeah, I can see that. There was one of the articles I wrote there that ended up being accused of a rug pull. I'm still on the fence whether it was, intentional or they really just mismanaged their whole project and it kind of blew up on them. But either way, yeah, I know what you mean as far as hindsight being 2020. So on the topic of kind of the blogs, like what Hakim's pulling together on Octave Up, and it sounds like he's got some questions for you as well. I'm looking at your other blog that you posted on LinkedIn where you interviewed Snoop Dogg's son, and I'm just wondering, like, how important do you think it is to really find, like, not necessarily quote unquote influencers, but people of, who have a reputation in the space, and not even just in Web3. It could be just in music, or like with what Hakim's doing. He's got his connections in the music industry, and he's able to kind of put them on the platform like that, versus, some of the unsung heroes, who don't get the limelight. How do you kind of weigh that out, or do you kind of just go with whatever is kind of available to you? Like, do you think that it's important to start with people who kind of have a little bit more gravitas, that is?
No, it's a really good question, because I launched with Sabet for a reason. I knew that I knew that his presence in the space was going to help me introduce the Daily Degen as this source. And he was also local, so I could do the photo shoot. And when you go to that article, you're going to see original photography. You can actually play clips of our interview, or you can read it. And I wanted to establish what the format was going to be for most of what I'm doing, unless someone is not like geolocal to me, then those are different. But at the same time, it's a matter of balancing this, and also just artfully doing it. Like, for instance, the spotty Wi Fi article, if people did not read it, it's probably mostly misunderstood. It looks as if I've singled spotty Wi-Fi out as some Web3 rapper of our time that deserves this kind of attention. But when you read the title, it's telling you this quitter became the head rapper in Web3, and you read a paragraph or two, and you realize that I'm saying if it wasn't for his PFPs, the guy wouldn't be where he is. And then to top that off, as I go deeper in the article, I literally feature some dissent from people in the community, from neighborhood jewelry, for instance. And it was an opportunity for me to actually mention and elevate Kane. Now, whether he sees that as that or not doesn't matter. But if I'm aligning him in the same breath as I'm talking about spotty Wi-Fi and presenting Kane as the underground king of hip hop, this is part of my role too. So it's typically to grab the attention with someone like Spotty and say, well, you know, this is how Spotty became who he is. And then you know, there's an entire legion of very talented artists that may not have the same level of notoriety, but they're coming for you, you know? And there'll be more articles about music that I would love to do. I just am not as connected to the Web3 music scene as I would like to be. And I want to be able to have some understanding of it before I dig too deep. But it was just an opportunity for me. And I'm really happy with it. Although I don't believe anybody I mentioned in it is happy that they were mentioned. Spotty Wi Fi himself has not shared the article, and I know
I
why,
was.
because it was too truthful, you know?
No, listen, I want to jump in on this. So this is one of the things I'll say. I appreciate you, Micah. I really appreciate your work because what you do is you write the story, not the agenda. And that's very different for a lot of people. Everybody assumes agenda off rip on anything from anyone. And if you read any of your work, you write the story, not the agenda. And I think that's what really, like you said at the very top when you started speaking, what this space needs. Somebody has to do the dirty infrastructure work to set a standard for what we think things should really be looking like as we move further into this direction. So I appreciate what you do and I appreciate your work a lot. And I told you directly, I appreciated that article because when I read it, you're calling all of it for what it really is. You're just showing all of it for what it really is. Here is manipulation versus sweat equity. And I think for me, what I took out of it, I think that the thing that everybody should really look at and take out, one of the things that they should take away from that is they should really ask themselves at the end of that who they think has a longer career ahead of them, not who made the bigger splash or headline so far, because that's irrelevant. Who's got the longer career ahead of them? And I think
Yeah,
that
for
is an
sure.
interesting proposition.
And I hope that, you know, moving forward, I'll kind of have you as um, some type of a metronome to understand how and where I can focus my energies in Web3 music, because you know I don't want to force stories that I'm not informed about or I don't understand the context. And that's really the thing that's kept me from reporting even on a lot more artistry, because you know it's different to be an art writer than it is to be a journalist. So it isn't my job to necessarily critique, but getting under the surface of like what makes this space work, what works in this space, why did this person happen to find success, and what can you learn from that? But also, you know, even if you learn something from someone that you can't rinse and repeat, you need to understand what the values are, or what is more probable to work in our space. It's really some analysis. And I think that's also why the 50,000 views are happening, because there's a lot of Web2 people that are looking for more depth in the article so they can understand what the hell they're trying to get into. And a lot of these articles are just not doing that. They're either speaking to people who are already in Web3, or they're pretty much bashing the space or with clickbait and stuff like that. But I found, and interestingly enough, here we are on LinkedIn. My newsletter on LinkedIn is heavily read, and it's mostly a Web2 uh, thing, because it's mostly people in Web2 and LinkedIn. So what I'm going to begin to do now, when the article's published in the Daily Degen, they're going to make their rounds on other platforms, the exact same article. So the LinkedIn newsletter will have the same story. It will also be published on Medium. It will also be published on Mirror.xyz. So wherever you happen to spend your time or get your news, you're going to come across this story. And I kind of experimented with Sabet doing that. Not the full, what I would call the tiered release that I have planned, but with some of these stories coming up, I'll finally reach that point where there is a tiered release strategy of the article all the way through to my newsletter, which is about 12,000 subscribers, which I haven't even launched yet. That will then summarize all the articles that were written. So it will be a lot harder to miss these stories. And that's why I want to begin to focus on people that really deserve it. Like, literally, when I'm writing about this person, I know they're not going anywhere. They've been in the space, they've proven themselves, and there will be no regrets. It'll be more about, if you didn't know about this person, now you do. And if you already knew, you're probably finding out things that you didn't know before, and it's giving you much more appreciation of this person's journey.
That's amazing. It's a huge addition to the space and definitely necessary, like you said off the top. And I think, you've got a lot of nuggets of wisdom in these articles as well. Like looking at that spotty Wi-Fi article, while you definitely did make it clear kind of his untraditional trajectory. I think that you ended on an interesting note about how much understanding the niche market, and also knowing that you have a loyal community that's kind of paying attention and actively kind of engaged in what you're doing, is such a huge part of success in Web3, right? And I think that, if anything comes out of it, there's also those little tidbits for anybody who just wants to know how to navigate the space, right? But to your point, I think, putting that on the level, you got Low Sleazy quoted there, you got Hakim Draper on there, and Kane Mayfield. So I agree, whether you want to see it as underground, or I think there's a quote there from Low talking about, I don't know if it was Low or Hakim, talking about Web3 being like 90s hip hop, right? And I definitely resonate with that, or even 80s hip hop, like hip hop before it really just like blew up, right? And that is kind of how Web3 feels. It has a little bit of an underground feel, but not all over the place. There's kind of a, I don't know, there's like an opera crowd, there's kind of a mainstream kind of hip or pop crowd, you could say, and then there's the underground hip hop crowd, which I agree of your kind of the way you've described Low and Kane here, and kind of the underbelly of hip hop in Web3, which is where the fun's happening. It's where the party's happening in the metaverse. Shout out to Jagar. He just made a full-length music video in the Voxels metaverse, right? So I do think that, to your other point, Hakim, the longevity and the future is more with Kane's style, and I'm not sure that banking on your PFP or banking on the FOMO or the hype around you because you own an ape or whatever the case may be is a good long-term strategy. But power to anybody, can't knock the hustle. But yeah, you just got so many good nuggets there. So Hakim, I don't know if you want to jump in on that. Again, if anyone has any questions, please do send them in the DMs. But we're having a really great conversation with two real innovators and creators in the space. And yeah, thank you both for sharing all these insights. But what do you think, Hakim, as far as the impact of music in Web3 specifically, right? Like, I look at what Jagar created, and I'm sorry you couldn't get up here, Jagar, to join the conversation. LinkedIn needs a little bit of work still. But when you look at that music video that he created in Voxels, right, featuring, Low Sleazy, DJ Booman, Kane Mayfield. So you got the collaboration happening. You have the actual full video in the metaverse, in the digital world. And it's selling, right, as an NFT. And now you've got a community of holders that may have some new additional benefit to holding this NFT that they don't even know about yet. So how do you feel about just the general impact of something like that and the way that the space is kind of evolving?
So we have this conversation all the time where people will ask, like, what is a Web3 label or whatever? And I don't think a record label per se exists in Web3. What I do think is that the model that succeeds in Web3 is everything is old is new again. So I look to Wu-Tang that has interactive individuals that are also part of a greater collective. Everyone has their own solo career, but at the same time, the collective is a priority, is a key component to what they do. And that collective is also a community hub where there's an exchange of ideas and interactions and fans and all kinds of other things. So I think and I said this about this drop, this blockchain jewelry is the drop. It's if you haven't seen it, it's called blockchain jewelry. It's two communities basically that came together, blockchain gospel and neighborhood jewelry, that started with just the two people from the community that came together, and then somebody else got involved, and then somebody else got involved, and all of a sudden the best way I could describe it was great, because what you're seeing is everybody has been around each other for so long that everybody knows where everybody's skill sets are. So it's really like watching a really great basketball team where you're seeing a bunch of no-look passes and wild outside threes. And every time somebody hands you the ball back, it's like, whoa. And then here's the mix. Whoa. Hey, here's the clip of the first clip from the visual. Whoa. And then you see the whole thing come together and you're like, it's that to me, that's the formula. And I think it's a more balanced win-win from the fan artist relationship side. It's probably not going to be as scalable as the obscene money that top artists make today, but that doesn't need to be anybody's goal. I talk about all the time. I work with acts that nobody knows that make a very good living. They tour a couple times a year. They play their little niche in their circuit. A skate punk band that I work with that does, they do a couple hundred, $500,000 a year. Nobody knows who they are. They never charted. They never been on. They don't barely even put their stuff up on streaming. They've super served their fan base. Their fan base don't listen to streaming a lot, but their fan base will buy vinyl from them. And their fan base will buy all their merch and they'll come to their shows, and they're okay buying direct, doing hand-to-hand transactions, or, buying anywhere where they know it's directly from them. And, Bandcamp and all kinds of things. So I think that we're starting to see the foundations of what will be the more sustainable model. Anyone in Web 2, Web 3, doesn't matter, with the right gimmick can make a splash. Can you build something that sustainably earns you money from living in your creativity? That's been the real question. We've seen all the PFP splashes and the gimmicks and the money and the spend money to market and pay influencers. We've seen all of it, and it all just goes away like the tide goes out. And what we're starting to see now are the models that are going to prove to be realistically scalable and sustainable. And I think they'll grow in a really healthy way. And I think that no one needs to conquer in the music space. No one needs to conquer mainstream anything anymore. All you need to do is find your fans. If you do that, you can, man, those guys practice every Thursday. They only go out and tour for 6 weeks, twice a year. They don't even play a lot of local shows, but they meet up every Thursday and practice like it's just part of their job, because it is. Like this life that you can build as a musician, as a creator, living in your creativity and really making any kind of real money off it. They still do other stuff and day jobs and side jobs and other things, but they do all right. And I think that over here, we can see a lot more of that in a lot more creative ways. And I think we could see a lot more communal exchange that's going to start creating more organic discovery, like we've seen between the Dream Conduit and the Blockchain Gospel and Neighborhood Jewelry and, for a while, the Digital Army. There was this really cool organic discovery that started to happen again. And that's what happens when we kind of remove the algorithms from our personal creative journey and equation of how we find our fans. Yeah, we still have to pay attention to them, and we got to do what we have to do with the social media platforms. But in the end, if you start finding your fans, you super serve those fans, and they will generate more fans. And then you have a community. I think that's what we're seeing now.
Super serve your fans. I like that. I can tell you've told some artists that a few times. That's amazing though. So if you were comparing, like that band you're talking about that does enough to feel comfortable and make their way and, serve their fans, do you see the Web3, the NFT as kind of that new specialized vinyl? Essentially, it's like that new offer that any artist can just add to their quiver and, keep it rolling and kind of, like you say, super serve their community and add all kinds of utility to the NFT and give them that opportunity to, serve their community. I
actually go a step further. Yeah, I go a step further, which is as an artist who's trying to find your footing, you can't afford not to spend some time in these communities and wrap your head around what's going on. And, I think one of the journeys that I've really, really enjoyed watching was the Kane Mayfield journey. And it goes back a couple of years. And it's because it's his journey started like most artist journeys start when they come into Web3, which is, oh, this sounds like bullshit. I'm not doing any of this. This all sounds like nonsense. I don't know. It all sounds complicated. It all sounds confusing. I don't know. He says it all the time. I don't know your Mega Man mask and he jokes all the time about how that was his attitude when he first got here. But the thing he did that most artists don't do is he stuck around and he kind of started to figure some things out. And then here's the greatest part about it to me, the greatest part about the journey. Talk to him. His first NFT, he sold 2 or 3. And then, waited a while and regrouped and took stock of what he did and tried to kind of figure out what he felt like he did wrong and what he felt like he did right. And then he improved on it and he put more into it. And then the next NFT did better. And then the next NFT did, and then he did handprints. And then he really starts finding his stride and he's moving around on multiple chains and he's doing all of these really highly curated drops. And if you actually pay attention, what he did was he popped around in all these communities, and then there's certain people in these communities that kind of became fans of his. They discover his music. He talked about being an artist. He'd have discussions. People would go, oh, this dude's pretty dope. And then he would super serve those fans. Oh, you only mess around over here? I'm gonna do one of my NFTs over here. I don't care if it's only 6 of you over here that's gonna buy it. You're over here and you're a fan of mine. And I think if you really take a step back and look at his greater journey, to me, that's where I really started to see the comparison to the music industry. And it's not the modern music industry. It's the industry that I've been involved with and evolving with for the last 30 years. Breaking as an artist, establishing yourself as an artist is the same no matter what you do. You got to get out there. You got to work community. You got to find your fans. You got to find your tribe. You got to listen to them. You got to vibe with them. You got to present your ideas and concepts and really take some chances. And then you have to figure out how you grow with them and keep expanding that. And the thing is there is no point to which you go, okay, mission accomplished. Here's the dirty little secret. This is the job you're after. Embrace it with everything. because it's a great job. Think about that. If that's your job and you're able to sustain and make a living doing that, you're engaging with fans, you're living in your creativity, and you're making music. What's so bad about that? So what if that is forever? You add in touring, you add in, you grow over time. It's always incremental. But that's where the parallels I started to see. And, again, it's the same in the music industry as it is over here. Yeah, I could throw some money around and tap into some people I know and get some influencers and put together a stupid PFP project and pump the bag. I could do all that. Anyone could do that. Anyone could do that with the right budget. Anyone. Probably not so much anymore because all these celebrities are now caught up in all these lawsuits. But, it was a window of time there where for sure anyone could do that, just like anyone could come in and spend their way onto US radio. That doesn't translate to fans or dollars or a career. It just means you paid somebody to play your stuff for a few minutes on the airwaves.
No doubt.
You didn't
It's
earn
like Web3 warriors could pay for a bunch of fake listeners. That wouldn't help us out though.
Yeah.
Right.
Hakim, what you're saying, it's interesting because that quote from Kane, I have a few quotes from Kane in my article. He said, "This isn't the music business. It's not about talent in Web3. How good you are at rapping doesn't matter here." And he understands that and is able to accept that as a rapper and performer and understand that the business of it is just as important as the talent of it when it comes to Web3, which is why he has made it his mission to essentially tour not the country, but the communities of Web3. It is a community tour. And if you do the community tour and you shake hands and kiss babies, you're going to be okay. And all that goes back to what you said earlier, which was you just got to be here. It's not going to be like this all the time, but it's like this right now. Tell people all the time when they're like, oh, I'm going to launch an NFT collection and this and that. And I'm like, nobody knows you. You need to spend time instead of jumping in here running rooms, sit in the room, talk, listen, just establish yourself as a enduring presence around here, and you're part way there. Then you can start to communicate your ambitions and what you want to do, and people are going to gravitate to that, and you're going to be able to do this. The one thing that I did think was quite fascinating is you said early in that you did not think NFTs were necessarily the vehicle, and that's probably a conversation I would love to have later. But some of these people that have just been putting in the work that haven't yet necessarily seen the fruits of that labor, I'm certain that in time to come, all of that's going to change. And they'll be in interviews and stuff talking about how hard they worked and when they couldn't sell an NFT and blah, blah, blah. Because in many cases, even for artists, it's not even necessarily about the art you're looking at. People are buying for many different reasons. So it's just a different nuanced market right now, this Web3 thing and what it takes to actually be successful.
Yeah, well, listen, and on that, I mean, I love NFTs. I think what's happening is we have a lot of lazy application right now. And I don't think that NFTs for distributing music are going to be the great solution to the challenge that we face. I think that blockchain and token mechanism for permissions and rights and being able to have some kind of control and visibility into where your content is, I think is going to be really important for creatives. But what I do think is that I think that as we see more dynamic NFTs start to be deployed, and like Snoop's doing the thing with the tour thing, which is, that's a whole nother conversation we could have. I'm a little bitter. I'm not a part of it. But so this is something we were experimenting with last year. And we were doing, we were experimenting with NFTs that were linked to time of day, also proximity to venues, also proximity to maybe the artist or other fans. So we were really experimenting and playing around with a lot of this stuff, and trying to figure out. I mean, there's something there. I'm not sure where the answer is. I will tell you, in all of the things that we did, there's so much more to what NFTs can do and be. I just think PFPs and putting your song as an NFT is kind of a lazy application. I love the NFT as a token gate, as the membership key, as the fan rewards, because you've earned all these stripes. So I'm gonna keep airdropping you sergeant stripes until you're a major in my army. I love all that. Even if they buy them or earn them along the way through concert tickets and participation in my social media ecosystem or streaming ecosystem or promotional ecosystem, whatever it is. I think there's a neglected piece in the new, and shouldn't even say new, in the modern creative economy. There is a neglected piece of the equation. We call it creator sweat equity, or fan sweat equity. The fan sweat equity that it takes for your favorite artist to get big enough for them to get on your radar is tremendous. And the fact that we still are not aggressively figuring out new and creative ways to track and reward that early fan sweat equity. You know how easy it is by the time you get an artist from doing the dive bars to hitting the first Grammy, and you look back in the ecosystem and you go, wait, where's those like 25 or 30 day ones in this whole list of special people that we have on our fan club list? What level of reward have we given them that's extra to everyone else because they shared everything when it counted the most? And I think we can't neglect that. I think that is what's going to build the new legacy acts. It's not just going to be the music, and it's not just going to be your performance. It's going to be the way that you engage and rewarded your fans. And that's going to be the thing that creates that 30, 40-year bond with an act. It used to happen in different ways over the last few decades. And we're watching everything evolve, and everybody's going, well, where are the next legacy acts going to come from? But inside, I will tell you, having been inside two very successful camps, listen, Bruno Mars and Anderson .Paak ain't going nowhere, no time soon. So I think where the next legacies will come from is really going to be determined by who actually super serves their fans and engages and rewards those fans that really get them to the level where they can actually have a chance. I think those guys are going to be the real winners.
That's amazing, Hakim. You're just dropping gems, especially for those in the music space, but I think it applies even more broadly to the creators in the space as well. That's amazing. I want to thank you both. I know we got about 10 minutes left here. I don't know if LinkedIn just abruptly cuts me off when time's up or not, but just in case, I want to thank you both. It's really amazing. So on the one hand, we've got your songsecure.com, art secure, Hakim, that you're working on, using the blockchain to secure IP and make sure that things are, your records are clear and on chain. You don't have to worry about going to the copyright office necessarily. So that was a really amazing use case off the jump. And then more broadly, just everything about, the way the music industry can change and the way that Web3 can be a tool for artists. Thank you for contributing that. And Micah, like everything you're doing in journalism is so amazing on the blockchain, and I will continue to be reading your articles on dailydgen.io. And that's a really interesting platform too that I got to ask you more questions about. I got to have you on the podcast again, and we can talk journalism on the blockchain and see what's going on there. And definitely, please do take my offer, and I'm down to do some writing with you. It's really exciting. But yeah, thank you everyone. It's been a really great conversation. I'm sorry that the hand raising wasn't working. Before we wind down, I want to give both Hakim and Micah an opportunity to say any last words. Micah, specifically, you know, when looking at the creator economy on the blockchain, and I think that you're someone who makes it a point, well, obviously as a journalist, but even beyond that, to really branch out and be in different communities and see what's happening all over the space. So I would be curious to know, like, how do you see this creator economy on the blockchain evolving from here? And what does it mean to you as a journalist?
Creator economy evolving. There's definitely going to be more players and more volume, but it's a tremendous glut. You know, one of the things that I talked about with Sabet was his output, and you know, I asked him. I said, at this rate, you know, if someone can mint 1,000 NFTs a day, how does that play into scarcity and the value perception? And how many NFTs do you think you're going to mint in your lifetime? You know, and so we are now going to have a tremendous number of products out there that are now digital that are just probably going to marginalize most of everything going on. If you don't have your communities you're rooted in, or some you know, standing in the space, this whole NFT thing, it's not going to be any different than, you know, having a you know, a table out on the street and hoping somebody stops and like buys the t-shirt you have sitting there. So like everything's going to be more about like true meaning and connection to something. And that's why I do believe people like Gary Vee that say that, you know, 90% of NFTs are going to be worthless because they're just being rooted in value the wrong way. And so hopefully as the space matures, people will begin to understand that it's not an NFT you're buying, and the NFTs just it's just a term and a technology. And I know we've been talking about this for a couple of years, but I don't think that the market has really grasped that yet. But once it does, we're going to shift our focus, and then I believe that we're going to start to see the improvements in the space that we need.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm with it. You know, I remember when Gary first made that point, and I think he even said 99%. And I get where he's coming from, especially in the PFP lane. But I've always pushed back on it and said, like, the art that I buy from an artist I'm supporting, whether or not that goes up in value, like, the artist won because I supported them by buying it, and I won because I like the art and I'm down to have it on my metaverse walls for the foreseeable future, you know? So it's kind of just like an added bonus if it happens to accrue value and I decide to sell it, okay, maybe. But I really feel like there's no losing in that, you know? Whereas the way that Gary had kind of framed that, it's like, oh, well, you all buying a bunch of losers, like these NFTs are going to be worthless. And I can say 90% of my NFTs cannot be worthless. So I'm happy with my NFT purchases. So Hakim, same question to you. You know, how do you see things evolving, or how would you like to see things evolving? And we'll wind down here. Thank you, everybody.
Well, I think to that whole point that Micah made in the Gary Vee quote, well, I look at parallels in the music industry. I think it's estimated right now that 97% of music that's released every year goes undiscovered. That means nobody's listening to it. It's barely their friends, maybe, or them. So, you know, I don't know that it's a value. I think it's whether people are actually seeing or engaging in them at all is really more of going to be the question. But yeah, I think, look, going forward, I mean, I'm certainly hopeful. I think that we have to stop drawing lines of like your Web 2 or your Web 3 or any of that nonsense. I think that, you know, one of the things that in dealing with the labels lately over the last few years, I think, you know, one of the things that has surprised and quietly impressed me, and I've mentioned this a few times in recent days, is that their ability to evolve and adapt to all of this has been quite impressive, and I wouldn't underestimate that. And on the flip side, I think the one thing that I will tell you from my experience over 30 years in the music industry, and I see a lot of parallels here again, is that there aren't gatekeepers and there's not a magic code and no one's going to put you on or give you a cosign that's going to make you sell 1 million NFTs and be rich overnight. There's none of that. There's anybody who's doing it under that way is just paying for it, and it's going to be a rug pull. The fact is that anything that's even been remotely successful over here, and frankly, even Bored Apes to that matter, started by building a community. And I think we overlooked that so quickly. I mean, it's the same as every single successful artist that I've managed to work with over the course of my career. It started with finding your people, man. It starts with dig in, master your craft, understand your why, be able to communicate your why or relay your why. For musicians, it's in your passion for performance and music and how you present yourself, how you prepare yourself. Be open, be honest. I think I'm very hopeful. I think that what we're seeing the dust settle. We're seeing the influencer bloom fall off the stem and go out of season. Everybody is seeing that stuff for what it is. And I think that there's still a lot of people building in a lot of significant ways in this space. And I think the bigger thing is that, man, there's no one way to do this. So who the hell are we to say which one is wrong or right? As long as people keep developing over here and we can all keep finding things that we find are utility or find that are additive or maybe inspire us to create our own solution to some complex issue in our own world, I think we're winning and we're heading in the right direction. And I think that when you look at artists like Kane Mayfield and where music NFTs specifically are headed, I think there's a lot of work for artists to do, to sit back and get comfortable and stop expecting people to just hand them stuff. But that's not any different than it is in Web 2. I'm throwing up air quotes. And then finally, I'll say, before anybody who is listening, I appreciate all of you. Before anybody don't let anybody pay for advice about the music business. Literally, we're sharing everything. Me and my friends collectively have, 100 years in this business. We're still active. This year, we've done 3 label deals. We're still very, very active. And we're sharing everything that we know and everything we can. So Octave Up is the website. It's free. There's never a sign up. There's never anything. Just if you know somebody who's curious about the music business or Web3 or any of this stuff, please just have them start there. Don't let them pay anybody, because honestly, everything you need to know to be successful in the music business or Web3 is free at this point. All of it, I promise you. It's all available to you. It's all available to you for free. It's not going to be all there, but all of the information that you need is out here in the world. There's a lot of really, really smart, experienced people that are really sharing a lot of really good information every single day. And I know you might have to wade through some nonsense and figure out who's legit and who's not, but I promise you, this stuff is out there, and paying for it doesn't make it any easier or quicker. So,
let's go. Public service announcement. Don't pay for advice that's free. And Hakim's been dishing out the advice in the blockchain gospel and the music business red pill sessions for over a year. Definitely tap in. Check out octaveup.com. Shout out to Hakim Draper, putting out all the gems for all the musicians out there to figure out, navigate their way in the space, not just in Web3, but in Web 2 and all other aspects of the industry. So thanks, Hakim. Thank you again, Micah. On that point you made about distinction between Web3 and Web 2, one place where I will always proudly make that distinction is in the metaverse. And that's where we're going to go next month. We're going to be talking to some metaverse builders. I'm extending the invitation right now to K-Bot and Brooke and Metavoxels and Amy. I'd love to chat with y'all about the amazing creations you've got in the metaverse. So that's what we're going to be talking about next month on the last Friday of July. July, and I'm looking forward to that, and really just continuing to build and push this narrative out here in the space. We'll be back with the Web3 Warriors next week. This is actually going to be episode 68 of Web3 Warriors because it was so engaging and really enlightening. You guys dropped a lot of gems. I appreciate it. A little bit of atmosphere noise from Hakim, but that's okay. You know, it just adds some color. But really appreciate you guys. It's really amazing. And I'm looking forward to the next chat. Hopefully we can bring more people in here. We'll keep building in the LinkedIn space, as well as on Clubhouse and on Twitter and on Twitch and on all the podcast networks. So thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it. I'm glad you were able to get some knowledge from this. Yeah, and until next time, we'll catch you all in the metaverse. Peace out, everybody. Thank you, Hakim. Thank you, Micah.
Appreciate you all. Thanks,
you.
everybody.